welcome to the Psychopathology Summit 2018. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Dr. Vadetka, and my guest for this session is lovely Dr. Sarah Ballantyne, and the Paleo Mom, of course. So Dr. Sarah is the blogger behind the award-winning blog, The Paleo Mom, and she's also co-host of the top-rated and syndicated The Paleo View podcast, and New York Times best-selling author of The Paleo Approach, The Paleo Approach Cookbook, and The Healing Kitchen. Dr. Sarah earned her doctorate degree in medical biophysics at the University of Western Ontario in 2003. But Dr. Sarah is more than just a scientist. She is also a devoted mom and wife, and she blogs about the challenges of raising a paleo family and living in a family where the members have different dietary requirements. And in fact, it was Dr. Sarah's identity, first and foremost, as a mom that inspired the name of her blog, The Paleo Mom. So Dr. Sarah, welcome to the Psychopathology Summit. It's so great to talk to you again and have you contributing yet again. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me again.
It's absolutely my pleasure. I love talking to you and listening to you, and you always have so much to share. And I know you've got some good insights with regards to mindset, because, of course, when it comes to autoimmune healing, diet is important, as we know, but in the end, a lot of things are driven by our emotional state, and that includes biochemistry as well. So people may know or may not know that it was your health challenges that actually obviously led you to experimenting with paleo and creating the blog. Of course, getting the diet right was a massive part of your recovery. But I was wondering what role the mind factors played in your healing journey, because I'm assuming that was also an aspect that you needed to get right.
Oh, absolutely. I think that without getting mindset dialed in, I don't think I would have had the willpower or stamina to, commit to the diet and lifestyle factors that are so critical for my physical well-being without having my mental well-being, also addressed in there. I think that it would have been so much easier at some point over the last few years to just lose the thread. For example, I know that I'm a person who really needs a lot of sleep. So if I don't get to bed at a good time, I have to have my own grown-up bedtime. I have to go to bed. And this is a really common experience for people with autoimmune disease is, the immune system is super linked with the hormone changes that are impacted by lack of sleep. So if you don't get enough sleep, that's by itself inflammatory, and it's impossible to heal without prioritizing sleep. But it's also so tough you feel like you're giving up this huge part of your life. You feel like you can't be fun anymore. You can't go for a girls' night out. There's a really big emotional challenge around making a choice like that consistently. And I would say the autoimmune protocol is sort of full of similar types of mindset challenges. And so for me, I had to really change how I talked to myself about the choices that I was making in order to stop viewing them as a hardship and instead be empowered by how those choices that otherwise would have seemed really hard, instead, now I recognize how much those are going to improve my health. And that's why they're so important, right? It's self-care. I'm not being punished by my early bedtime. I'm looking after myself with my early bedtime. Took a long time for me to get to a place where I could follow these healthy choices consistently on a day-to-day basis and not feel like I was somehow being deprived, and instead feel nurtured by those choices. And that entire journey came from addressing mindset.
Yeah, because, in a way, and we talk to other people about this, that in a way, those choices that you're describing that are part of your healing, and you need to be making the right choices in order to heal, are an act of self-love, aren't they? And in the end, if you don't have the right relationship with yourself, or you don't have the right mindset, then you will find those choices really challenging, and you see it as a restriction or as a complete pain in the neck. But in the end, the autoimmune protocol is designed to help you heal. And if you have the right attitude towards your healing, and that means the attitude towards yourself, if you value yourself enough, and if you have that orientation of, I want to nurture myself, I want to support my body, then that kind of puts a completely different slant. And in a way, it stops you from perceiving it as just restricting and like the whole world is against you and this is just all awful and I have to go through it, right?
Well, exactly. And so one of the things that I do as I'm talking with people who are trying, they're considering following the autoimmune protocol because they're struggling with whatever autoimmune disease or another chronic illness, and they know that this is going to be healing protocol for them, but they're intimidated, right? It is a big change for people, and it is a comprehensive protocol. So it involves dietary changes as well as lifestyle changes. And often it's the lifestyle changes that are the hardest thing for people to sort of wrap their heads around. And so I'll often try to make people feel okay as they're approaching that transition by saying it's not that the autoimmune protocol is hard. It's not hard. If you talk to anybody who's been following it for a while, we all get to a place where this is just how we live and it's not a big deal. And we've figured out what to order in a restaurant and what to eat while we're traveling and what to have for breakfast when we sleep in and what to, cook for dinner on, dance night when all the kids get home super late from school. We've got all of those problems solved, and you get to a point where it's a lifestyle and it's not, it doesn't feel restrictive anymore. And what I try to explain to people who are sort of new looking at this protocol is that there's a learning curve, and it does take a while. It takes some commitment and dedication in the beginning. But what I don't necessarily emphasize, it's more just sort of, it's implied in this transition, in this journey, is that problem-solving piece that comes with adapting to the different priorities in terms of diet and lifestyle, that the main driver of that learning curve isn't really the figuring out the recipes that I'm going to cook or the convenience food I'm going to keep in my purse. I mean, that's part of it. But the biggest part that gets you from, oh my gosh, this thing is really scary, I don't know if I can do it, to, yeah, no, that's just the way I live. The biggest driver of that journey is the mindset aspect. And it's because every time you solve a problem that you're encountering, you are taking on a positive approach to the entire healing journey. So as you're going through that learning curve and you hit, okay, what am I going to pack for my lunches to work? Oh, I'm tired of this food. What's the next food I can pack? Oh no, I have a work trip coming up. How am I going to eat? Or, oh, my friend bought me this thing that used to be my favorite old food. I know I can't eat that anymore. What am I going to do? How am I going to fit a walk every day into my routine? We each have these little bits and pieces, right? We're taking the whole protocol and breaking it up into little bits. And as we tackle each one of those, challenges as I need to find the solution to this, we're also integrating it into into a mindful approach to healing, right? So it really is about approaching it in a positive way, in a this is worthwhile finding the solution for. And I don't think a lot of people recognize as they're going through that transition that's what's happening, is that they're learning how to prioritize their own health with each choice that they make and learning how to put themselves first. It's such a common experience with autoimmune disease sufferers that we're the caregivers, we're the type A personalities that want to have everything. We want to be everything to everyone. We're going to be the career parents and volunteer for the PTA. And then also, oh, my friend who needs, childcare help, I'll take their kids home on this day. We spread ourselves so thin without realizing that what we're really doing there is devaluing ourselves. We're not putting ourselves on the to-do list. So part of the autoimmune protocol is learning how to value our own health, at least equally with other major life goals, at least equally with the other members of our immediate family, but we're learning how to put ourselves on the to-do list. And that is such an empowering aspect of this journey.
Oh, without a doubt, we have to remember that a lot of people, that exactly as you said, they get to this point, they get to the point where they have a lot of symptoms and they're falling apart for that very reason, because they spend decades putting everybody else first. So it's almost as though life is coming around saying, do you know what? You need to learn this lesson. And so I'm giving you this, the autoimmune disease, as your tool to actually learn your lesson. And therefore, and when you learn it, you know what? You get better and you recover, right? Because all of those steps that you described ultimately lead to better health and recovery, both on the mind level and of course on the physical and biochemical level. So that's kind of funny how it all works.
Well, and I think as somebody who has been in this space for just about 7 years, so my health journey began before that, but I really started to get answers about 7 years ago. And I was it was my wedding anniversary yesterday, 15 years. And so my husband and I were in a very sort of reflective mood, and we were thinking back to a lot of the challenges that we faced as a couple that were driven by my health challenges. And my husband said to me, and he was very sweet. So he said, you are, more beautiful than you've ever been. You're just so much more confident and just happy in your life than you've ever been before. And it's not because I'm taking, I've got this amazing work-life balance thing worked out and I'm spending days at the spa or that I have, this dynamic social group that fulfills my life. Like, I don't have those things. I spend most of my time working and then focusing on my children. And that's the same balance that I've been trying to strike for 11 and a half years of parenthood, trying to figure out how to have a career and be an engaged parent and also look after myself. The difference is purely the journey through the autoimmune protocol to get to a point where I have learned to value myself. I have learned to prioritize myself. And that has been very fulfilling for me. That has really changed. It's changed my sense of self-worth, my sense of self-confidence. And it's fed into every other aspect of my life, because if I can see myself as being worthy, then it's not only just motivational for, choosing the apple over the cupcake, but it makes me feel braver, more assertive. It also makes me get more joy out of things that have been in my life for a long time, but that I wasn't necessarily appreciating before. It makes me feel more gratitude. And so it's a critical aspect of mindset, right? Valuing yourself that I didn't seek out to fix about myself. It's something that came organically through this health journey. But now that I've sort of achieved that aspect, it has literally permeated every part of my life.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm totally completely echoing every what you're saying. Very similar experiences here, but that's the thing. It's a journey of self-growth and self-development. This is why people then look back and go, do you know what? Not only do I not mind that this actually happened for me, really, not to me, for me, because it taught me so many things and it improved me as a person and in every really pretty much aspect. So it's not only that do I not mind, I'm actually thankful for that. And so many people say that when they get to the other side. And that's the reason why, because they're recognizing that when they get on board with it and they start this journey of self-growth, not just the autoimmune protocol journey, but this much on a much broader level of what you described just now. This basically opens up so many other doors, and it's no longer just about, do I have autoimmune symptoms? Do I not have autoimmune symptoms? It's so much more. It goes so much further and wider altogether, in terms of every aspect of your life, really.
And isn't that the most amazing thing, that you can look back at how this autoimmune disease was impacting my quality of life 10 years ago? And it was a hardship. It felt like life wasn't fair. It felt so frustrating. What did I do to deserve this? And then I would feel like I must deserve this, right? And I started having symptoms around the age of 10, and I didn't get diagnoses and answers to the autoimmune conditions that I was suffering until my mid-30s. I had my first diagnosis was in my teens, but I didn't understand my primary autoimmune disease until much later. And as somebody with Hashimoto's thyroiditis and fibromyalgia, those are two conditions that really dramatically do affect quality of life, even if they're not typically life-threatening. So it is a different situation than people that are facing life-threatening autoimmune diseases. But they are, the symptoms there, pain affects everything. And so, if you'd asked me 10 years ago how I felt about myself or my health or my autoimmune diseases, I would have been very frustrated, upset. I probably would have cried. I would have felt like there are huge barriers to me accomplishing everything that I want to accomplish. And through this health journey, I am also one of those people who feel like I can't, even though I had tremendous lows in my life that were driven by autoimmune disease, and not just health challenges, and not just mental health challenges, but things like, social dynamics challenges. And now my perspective on that is that autoimmune disease taught me so much. It took me a long time to learn those lessons, but I learned so much from autoimmune disease that I've been able to create a career for myself that has so much more meaning and so much more heart and impact. And I've been able to prioritize motherhood in a way that I couldn't have before. And I have been able to find life-fulfilling hobbies that I never would have made time for before. But it's that understanding the power of things like social connection as part of a healing journey that drove me to seek those things out. And I don't want to imply that in any ways my life is all sunshine and roses and absolutely perfect, but my perspective on it is so vastly different, because I can now look at autoimmune disease not as being purely the driver of the worst moments of my life, but also something that made me who I am, and that I can appreciate all of these amazing skills, perspectives, experiences, and how they have formed me that are driven by autoimmune disease. And I can appreciate and be thankful for those lessons and for those character traits that autoimmune disease gave me.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. And of course, well, some people will be listening here and they will be saying, oh, I wish I was at this stage, but perhaps some people listening here may still be at the stage whereby they do feel victimized. They're still asking the why me question. And of course, they're just finding everything so super overwhelming, and they're hating their experience right now. Do you have some advice in terms of perhaps, systematic approach and taking sort of one day at a time, or whatever else it may be, to direct them, to put them on that path, whereby day by day they can actually start feeling the benefit and developing the skills and the attitudes that we, both of us are now obviously describing as the sort of end point. But yeah, what would you say to those who are, sort of looking at it and go, yes, I can see that this is a great place to be, but from where I am, I don't see how I'm going to, get there, because I'm just so far away from that point.
And I remember still so vividly what that felt like, and that you would see people around you have some kind of success or some kind of transformation. And instead of making you feel hopeful, it would almost magnify all of the negative emotions that you were experiencing at the time. I vividly remember that. And so I think first and foremost to remind people that it is a journey. It's not like you can say, oh, I'm going to improve my self-talk and this is going to be fixed in a week. I worked on this in some fashion for probably a couple of years before things became, the self-talk became easy. And that still wasn't the end of my journey. I would say I'm still on my journey. I'd say this is still something that is continuing to evolve for me. So remember that it is a journey, and it's one of those things that you don't necessarily see how far you've come until you can start looking backwards. So it's a small incremental changes. And there's a lot of different ways to address mindset, right? There's various programs and there's therapists. And I know that this summit is going to cover a lot of the different options. What I can say was one of the most important things for me was mindfulness practice. And I started this when I started yoga classes. Yoga classes will typically end in some form of guided meditation. And as I was sort of on and off with yoga, I would have times in my life where I would fit it in because I always really enjoyed it. And then I had times of life where I felt like I just didn't have time. But as I was really diving into the research about how foods impact the immune system, I sort of tangentially ended up in a lot of research about how lifestyle factors impact the immune system. And that is why the autoimmune protocol now contains this strong lifestyle component. And the thing that I hit on as being like a scientifically proven stress management tool is mindfulness meditation, mindfulness practice. And I realized that this is exactly what I do in my yoga class. I could be doing this separately from a yoga class and do it at home. And so the first thing I did was I downloaded an app. There are tons of options now for apps that will do, some kind of guided meditation. That's the easiest place for most people to start. And I started carving out 5 minutes a day. So I wasn't doing a sitting for an hour. Like I wasn't doing these like big, huge practices. So I would find these 5-minute guided meditations. I actually preferred to lie down for them. I think that was because of my training in yoga. I felt more comfortable lying down to do a guided meditation than sitting. But I started finding times for break, and I'd have huge stretches where my whole day would go by and I wouldn't have time until bedtime to do a guided meditation. So I would do a sleep meditation at that point. We understand biochemically there's some really, really important neurological changes that are happening. There's actually literally changes in blood flow in the brain that is turning off inflammation during mindfulness practice. It's really phenomenal. It's impacting the HPA axis and regulating cortisol secretion, but also from the brain, like corticotropin releasing factor secretion. So it's affecting the entire axis. So it's really impacting our perception of stress and our physiological reaction to it. And that then makes, improves sleep quality. It actually drives better food choices. It's sort of, when you can address stress, often all of the little pieces will fall into place. It makes sort of everything else a little bit easier. And it doesn't take a huge amount of time. So I started incorporating, and if I had time for 10 minutes, I would do 10 minutes. But it was, and I just had an app. I've tried many different apps over the years. I think they're all good. And if you don't like the first one you download, try a different one. The 3 that I can sort of think of off the top of my head are Calm, Headspace, and Insight Timer. Insight Timer is completely free. Calm and Headspace have some meditations that you can get for free, and then you can pay a subscription to open up more different meditations. But that was my biggest tool for just centering myself. And one of the things that I highly recommend that I found later was gratitude meditations within mindfulness practice, because gratitude has separately been studied in clinical trials and shown to be beneficial for all of those same systems. So you can actually incorporate the two by doing a gratitude mindfulness practice or gratitude guided meditation. And that is now one of my favorite things to do because it really focuses my thought patterns on what I'm thankful for. You can be in the middle of all of this negative chaos and you can still be grateful that the weather cooperated today, or you can still be grateful that you had all of the ingredients in your fridge to make dinner. You didn't have to run out to the store, or you can still be grateful that you can hug your child, right? There's these small little things that we can still find gratitude for. And I found that, especially as a practice over time, that focusing in on what I was appreciating, it started with small things. It started with small things that were not necessarily inside my control. And it eventually merged into gratitude for myself, gratitude for the knowledge that I have in terms of, what to eat and lifestyle choices. It merged into gratitude for things like access to a wonderful farmer's market and the community that I have found there. Gratitude to my husband who, supports me going to bed early. Like it merged into exactly the mindset changes that have been so empowering for me.
That's fantastic, and a lot of wonderful tips. And I hope this is making perfect sense to everybody, because we've heard it so many times about the benefits of mindfulness, and just combining it with gratitude, even greater, a greater impact, as you said. And you know what, I've said this 100 times, but honestly, I am going to say this again, because I really, really need people to understand that in order to heal, we do need to activate our parasympathetic mode. And if you are chronically stressed because you have chronic, not even big financial pressures or whatever people perceive as stress, not the sort of big everyday stresses. That's not even what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those small underlying, being annoyed because you're doing the autoimmune protocol and you don't like cooking and you really feel hard done by because, you can't just go and buy foods. You have to make them, and just generally feeling anxious about the future perhaps, or feeling guilty about the past, or whatever it may be, shame, other things, fears of all sorts of descriptions that are just there in the background all the time. Now, that is something that, if we have those negative emotions, they're activating the fight and flight all the time. And if we are in fight and flight, we cannot heal. So people really need to, connect with what we're saying here, understand what you're saying, how important that is to assign those at least, few minutes every day to doing those practices, because that is what promotes healing ultimately. And as you said, it makes all of those other things that we need to get right so much easier. And then, of course, if we nicely relax and the body's calm and the HPA axis is calm, then, the gut will heal more quickly and we detox better, and it just goes on and on and on. So I know I've said this before, but isn't it true that people massively underestimate this, and they could be eating the best organic food and follow the autoimmune protocol 100%. But if they're stressed out of their head because they have some chronic anxiety or whatever, they're not really maximizing the healing. In fact, they're interfering with the healing process, and they're making all those sacrifices elsewhere. They're still interfering with the healing process, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we actually have a collection of scientific studies now that are starting to show that not that diet isn't important, but that lifestyle is at least equally. And there's certain systems, right, like insulin sensitivity, that it actually matters more how much sleep you get and how active you are and how well managed your stress is. That is more important to managing diabetes, reversing pre-diabetes, keeping your insulin sensitivity high and your blood sugars well regulated. That's more important to have those lifestyle factors dialed in than anything that you eat. Now, we know with autoimmune disease, of course, food is really, really important. And one of the things that I will often talk with someone is when food becomes the stress, how do you back up from that so that you can let go of the stress because of just how detrimental that stress aspect is. And it's because stress impacts every biological system. So it's feeding directly into the immune system, but it's feeding directly into our mental health through neurotransmitter regulation. It's feeding directly into our gut health. So stress impacts even the types of bacteria that want to grow in our guts, but it's also impacting gut barrier health. So being stressed causes a leaky gut and causes gut dysbiosis. It's impacting thyroid function by suppressing it. It's impacting sex hormones. It's impacting circadian rhythms, so it can derail sleep quality. So, and then those things all, right? Those things all control other systems too. So it goes down the line in terms of all of the effects. So basically every system in the human body is harmed by chronic stress. For a lot of people, it sounds so wishy-washy to meditate. And there's a couple of things going on. So guided meditation, as I mentioned, worked wonderfully for me. It is not for everybody. Some people just, they roll their eyes the whole time and they just can't relax. So if you're somebody who really can't stand guided meditation, I recommend breathing practices. The simplest one is to do a 4-count breath. So you simply breathe in for 4 counts and you breathe out for 4 counts. It's not your normal breathing pattern. So normally we would breathe out for longer than we breathe in. So it's also called equal breathing. So by equalizing that pattern, and set a timer on your phone to do it for even just 3 or 4 minutes. But when you're focusing on a difficult breathing pattern, it's really hard to worry about something at the same time. You can't worry about how the dishes need to be done downstairs. So, and what you can do with that, in for 4 counts, out for 4 counts, is you can make it 6 counts, so then make it 8 counts, and try and gradually slow down your breathing. And a lot of people who don't like guided meditations, that can be a really great alternative. Also, I think it's probably good to emphasize that there's a lot of different styles of guided meditation. So if you don't like one, you might find a different style that you like a lot better. There's also sort of sound therapies. So instead of listening to somebody's voice, you can listen to relaxing sounds. The trick with that is to not have any other stimuli. So you would do that either sitting with your eyes closed or lying down with your eyes closed and just taking a minute to just listen to those sounds. And there's actually some really neat soundscapes that are literally designed to get your brain into a theta wave pattern. And there's even great science to show that they're quite effective. And so that's actually putting your brain into a brainwave pattern that is very similar to sleep. And so it's a very relaxed, again, sort of meditative state without listening to somebody asking you to, examine your toes mentally, right? Like there's, types of sort of body scan meditations. Some people really don't like them. And then there's another thing that's incredibly meditative without being a practice meditation, and that's time in nature. So there's a huge, again, amount of scientific literature showing those sort of restorative aspects and benefits to our blood pressure, cardiovascular disease risk factors, immune health, and HPA axis activation by just being immersed in nature. So whether that's going into the woods or going and sitting on the beach. There's studies showing that there's benefits even to going to an urban park setting. The trick with that is putting away the phone and just really being able to be immersed in that nature experience. And again, it doesn't need to be long. Studies show that even 15 minutes in an urban park can have measurable quantitative benefits to health. So for somebody who goes like, I don't want to listen to, gongs and I don't want to listen to wave sounds, and I can't stand that person's voice running me through the guided meditation, just spending some time out in nature can achieve the same effects without feeling like you're forcing yourself to do something that's not natural for you. So I understand that meditation, people have different access points to it. And so I think it's really good to emphasize that there's a lot of things that can help you achieve the same mindfulness benefits that don't necessarily fall directly under that umbrella of mindfulness practice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of my favorite things ever would be connecting with nature. And there is such a thing as walking meditation. So even if you go, whether you're walking between 2 points or you just meandering and just sort of walking randomly, but focusing and being mindful in terms of all the sensations and what's happening in your body, and also, maybe the sounds of nature, or textures, and whatever else you want to focus on. If you're doing it mindfully, you essentially, again, you're achieving the same thing. So you do not need to sit on the cushion in a set position. Obviously, if that's your thing, great. That's not essential. As you said, there's exactly. There's just so many things we can do to achieve the same result. And actually, we're funny you should mention sound healing, because we have Mr. Hopkins on the summit doing a session about sound healing, but also doing a practical sound healing session, which is just amazing. So I want everybody to tune into that one. But, if it happens not to be your thing, then again, as we're saying, there's just so many other things you can do to tap into, to induce the same effect on the body. There's so many things. So awesome tips. I love it. And I think it's important to stress that there's no excuse, because everybody can find something for them, because there's just such a range of different things.
I think that's the other thing, is we all think that in order for it to be effective, we have to dedicate an hour. And most studies show cusp for effect is somewhere around 10 to 15 minutes. But we've got this growing body of scientific literature showing that you can have amazing benefits with just 5 minutes of mindfulness practice. 10 minutes is better, 15 minutes is better than that. But it doesn't need to be this huge time commitment that creates a stress in itself, because then you're more rushed in the rest of your day. I typically take several sort of 2-minute mindfulness breaks throughout the day. And for me, it's just 2 minutes of breathing typically. And it's such a small in time investment, right? It's so easy for me to find 2 minutes. That's not impacting my day in any way. I find a couple 2-minute breaks throughout the day. And that's something that everybody can do.
Absolutely, totally. And to emphasize, whether you do 4 or 5 minutes in one go, or whether you split it and do it in different parts of your day in 2 goes, then actually you're still getting the same benefit. It's sort of similar with exercise. A long time ago, people believed that in order to get the benefit, they need to do this chunk of activity in one hit. But that's actually not true. To get the health benefits, you can split it, and you can do a 30-minute exercise into 3 times 10 different times of the day. You still get the benefits. So it's a similar sort of thing. And so that's fantastic. Wonderful. Thank you for bringing all that into this conversation. Do you have any other tips for people with autoimmunity who are ready to take their health to the next level? And any other words of wisdom?
The other thing that I think feeds into this whole system is sleep. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge that I see among people who are following the autoimmune protocol and not seeing the results that they're expecting, is that sleep is somehow, it's somehow either not making it high up enough on the priority list to get done, or at least enough of it, or there's some kind of barriers to sleep quality, which is often stress. And I think that it's important to emphasize that those systems are intertwined. So reducing stress will help improve sleep quality, but improving sleep, not necessarily just quality, but also quantity, is the single biggest input to our stress axis. So if you're sleep deprived, everything in terms of how stressful it is magnified. If you've had enough sleep, your physiological reactions to a stressor are much more proportional. And so I think that is something that really goes hand in hand, is making sure that we're getting at least 8 hours of sleep per night. That typically means spending 8.5 to 9 hours in bed to get 8 hours of total sleep. And that also, just like stress, impacts your energy level and your focus and your mood. When it's impacting your mental health, it's easier to have positive self-talk. Same with stress. And then it's also impacting hunger and cravings. People who get enough sleep or people who have low stress, both of them tend to gravitate towards more fresh fruits and vegetables, and tend not to drink as much or smoke tobacco or eat junk food or fast food. So just managing stress and getting enough sleep can make every other change that you're trying to implement easier, but then it also can make the mindset aspect, how you approach those changes, easier, because they both pretty dramatically impact the regulation of neurotransmitters and neurotransmitter receptors. So they're both known to improve mental focus and acuity, but also mood and optimism and positivity. Make sleep a priority, even though it's hard to figure out the schedule. Make that a really, really high priority, and make mindfulness a priority. Those things will go hand in hand. They'll improve each other. And that can often be the thing that just makes everything else just, fall into place. And it can really accelerate the health journey, both the physical aspect of it, but also the mental health aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. That needs to be prioritized for sure. And you know what? And people may have even noticed. I know I do. I prioritize my sleep above all else, probably. In all honesty, and if I ever, for whatever reason, have to get up earlier, or I'm traveling, or have a disrupted night, I don't usually skew towards junk food. But on those days, it's so much harder to resist. Your mind and your body just takes you towards the wrong thing, and you have to be extra aware that is what's happening, and you to exercise more kind of self-control. But I'm sure that when people observe their patterns, they will, if they haven't realized that yet, they will soon realize that that's exactly what happens when the sleep isn't quite right, whether it is quantity or quality. That's very true. So great. That's absolutely excellent. Thank you so much, because it's such an important aspect. So again, great that you talked about that. Before we end, I wanted to ask if there's anything that you wanted to share about your work, or anything that you've got currently going on, and maybe some projects coming up, anything at all?
Yeah, so one of the things that I launched this year was a course for people who are interested in learning more about the autoimmune protocol. It's actually a course that's great for people who are completely new to the idea of diet and lifestyle changes for autoimmune disease management, but it also has a ton of information even for my followers who've been following the AIP for years. And I've actually had the full spectrum of experience levels in this course, and everyone is getting a ton out of the course. It's a 6-week-long course. It's 42 video lectures. And I go over all of the science behind all of the diet and lifestyle aspects of the autoimmune protocol, but science for the average person, not science for scientists. So I take my time to explain everything I assume about a 9th or 10th grade science level as I'm developing my lectures. And it includes a private Facebook group, so you can get personalized guidance and support, get your questions answered. And it's been probably I think it's my favorite thing I've ever created, just because it is such a robust education that is wrapped up with practical strategies and implementation, learning how to refine and troubleshoot, learning how to talk to your doctor, and smart use of supplements. Like, all of that is sort of included. And then also giving me the ability to connect one-on-one with students in a way that I haven't been able to do in any forum up until now. So the Autoimmune Protocol Lecture Series is really one of my absolute favorite products that I've ever created. And I run about 3 sessions a year. So I would say, go check it out, pre-enroll, so that you can guarantee yourself a spot, and take that learning on the AIP up to the next level.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I've actually heard from a number of people how awesome that course is. So, yeah, for sure, the word, it's going around, definitely rising in popularity. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much. Honestly, brilliant conversation as usual. Wonderful contribution from you. So on behalf of myself and everybody else who's watching, massive appreciation. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks again for having me.